Chestnuts roasting on an open fire. Jack Frost nipping at your nose. Hello, friends. Hello, internet friends. Six flannel. I know, Megan's she's going flannel crazy. I'm starting to really like flannel. What's up, guys? Gals? They, them, she, they, Zizer? What up, Zizer? So, Shabbat Salam, Under the Dome. What's going on? What's going on, Johanna? It's going to start getting real cold around these parts. So, good day. So, yeah, it looks like I'm going to be going face-to-face with Nathan Thompson. He seems to be very confident in his arguments for veganism. My prediction is that I'm not going to have to say much other than ask him very basic questions. And that alone will probably end it. I assume he's going to do some name calling, which is fine. He'll probably appeal to emotion through descriptive language of carnage. He might use the word animal genocide, the phrase animal genocide. But he's not off to a good start, as you saw the post that I just did on the gram and YouTube. He said, I'm arguing people shouldn't eat meat. Jim Bob's arguing people should. He's already starting from a dishonest. And then he said, let the best logic win. I'm like, you just started off with a fallacy. You literally couldn't even post the update for a debate without actually committing a fallacy. If you make a claim and I refute it, it doesn't mean I'm making a positive claim of its opposite. For instance, if some atheist argues murder's immoral because, and I refute the claim, I refute their argumentation, does it mean I'm arguing murder is great and we should do it? No. And this is, one of those things, like when you point out logic, if you're dealing with someone like me who's going to be strict to logic, you're going to be in trouble if that's your starting point, In fact, that starting point almost warrants an insult. So it's like I'm not opposed to, name calling, but your starting point makes you look retarded, or dishonest. And I think the latter, because I've seen Nathan in debates, and he's actually called out this very fallacy. I actually don't know the name of it. But when you assume, if someone's refuting you on one point, that means they're arguing the positive claim of the opposite. That they're arguing the opposite exactly is true, especially in the ought claim, in the ought world, which is where I linger in moral claims. So, to be clear, Nathan Thompson, you little sneak, you're arguing we shouldn't eat meat. I'm not responding with reasons we should eat meat. I'm responding with your argument is trash because XYZ. Okay? Learning a little bit about logic, okay, Nathan? Nathan has hangry vibes. Yeah, it's very female. It's It's like a bitchy, and usually the female vegans are the bitchy, really bitchy ones, but the males, mostly, I know some vegans who are just calm. They're not making moral claims. Actually, the calmest vegans are the ones who understand, which is my perspective, is that a lot of your diet really is given by your recent to even distant genetics, even possibly correlates to where you're from. And those things can be, I believe, transferred down to what you're capable of eating. So there's a reason when you go to different places, suddenly you're not acclimated to some of the food or even the water or even the parasites in the water. You're not gonna, you could probably do it, but you're not gonna just join an Inuit tribe and just start drinking seal blood, like doing shots. I've done it, I've gone into every aspect of health. It's like people think I went to Russia because the meth is good. That's true. But I also went to Russia because Russia is where a lot of those Eskimo tribes and the people of the colder climates went to. And so some of their feasts are still there, It's like, I'm not going to spend a lot of time in the deep freeze just to drink seal blood. Title of his video should be Sabbath. Yeah, that's hilarious. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. He's also, he might bring in biblical stuff, which he perverts the shit out of, by the way. I'll just give you a heads up on one. He appeals to the Garden of Eden. He literally appeals to Christianity and says, we shouldn't eat animals because that's how it was created. And we, in the Garden of Eden, nothing was killed or murdered. And you're like, not only does that completely invert Christianity, because it just completely disregards the fall, which is the basis of Christianity. You can't just take beforehand and be like, we're supposed to build the Eden here. That's very Jewish. We're going to build the Eden on earth. We're supposed to behave completely consistent with, no, we can't. We're fallen. It's not like if we just work hard enough, we can get back to our purest state before we fell. That's not how it works, Nathan, you retard. Even if it was, then you'd have to go out and stop animals from killing each other because that applied to the animals as well. Not to mention that it's all throughout. Christ telling the fishermen where to go. Genesis 3:9. Everything here is for you. But we're not going to need to go into Christianity or any particulars. He's going to go into particulars of usage of land and water and pragmatic arguments. I don't care. The claim is we ought to not eat meat. So I'm going to reduce his entire argumentation to preference in probably the first 3 questions. And then he's going to go in circles and increase his pitch, which will only be met by Jordan Peterson. I think on a separate note, which I won't argue, but I might allude to, is I really do think there might be, not with all vegans, again, the bodies are different, the genetics might play in, your provenance of peoples and where they lived throughout history might play in, but just in general, there might be something scientific. There might be a viable hypothesis that states maybe deficiency in certain proteins, fats, etc. in meat actually stops vegans from proper use of logic. Again, not all, which is crazy because, you know, if you were trying to, you know, it would suck to be in a state of mind where logic actually wasn't persuasive. Your inability to ground your own claims was no longer persuasive. But then again, that hypothesis is probably not exactly true because there are atheists who are meat eaters who also reject their own, you know, they don't confront where their own arguments are broken. They just double down or get emotional. Blood groups are crucial for diet differences. That makes sense too. You know, it's just like it's like this concept that it's all or nothing is so silly. But I mean, when it comes down to it, also they'll argue from necessity too. He's going to throw in that claim, I'm sure. We don't need to. Again, I already debunked that whole thing. I mean, it reduces necessity to an arbitrary goal. And then once the goal is arbitrary and you get them to admit that they're arguing an arbitrary goal, then they have to argue that it's not arbitrary, in which case they're in morality. And that's my domain. Bitch. But the bigger problem, if you even went down that route, is the Alive argument. If you got 12 contestants who are vegan on Alive, and they, you know, I don't know if you guys watch that. It's a great show. You know, it shows a lot of the reality of being alone, surviving, what it requires, its tools, all sorts of things. It's really, I love how it's done. But if you were to take 12 vegans on Vancouver Island for $100,000 if they reach, you know, suddenly the producers would be like, after one season of that, they'd be like, guys, if we're going to do another season of this, we got to call it dead. Because their bodies would eat themselves. And by the way, Nathan, you shouldn't post pictures of your selfie with your shirt off. You think that looks healthy. It doesn't. It doesn't look healthy. I can't exactly point to specifically. It's almost like when you see someone with dead eyes, you can't exactly get, you know, where the lifelessness is. And I'm not talking about your eyes. I'm talking about, I'm comparing it to the inability to actually pinpoint exactly. It's like a collage of things. But these people posting their skinny asses, you know, like it's in your arms. Like look at Nathan's photo of his arms. They're not meaty. They're not vital arms. It's almost like his body's contracting and pushing his internals outward so it looks like it's ripped, you know, but it looks weak. It looks like, emaciated. And you're like, it's not emaciated. Look at my six pack. And you're like, no, that can't be the basis. You know, he'll also appeal to that. You know, I've had like 5 men be like, send me a shirtless pic, Jim Bob. I'm like, dude, that argument is even easier to debunk. All I need to do is show a picture of a meat eater who looks ripped. Done. All I have to show is someone who's super healthy looking and ripped and show that they're not actually healthy. Do those exist? Yes. How about a slightly chunky person? I'm not talking about super obese. I mean, like, they have big bones, they're larger people, and their BMI is average or just above. Still healthy. They don't have a six-pack. The assumption that people with six-packs equal healthy is insane. Now, I don't argue for this bullshit overweight, obesity, it's just my body bullshit. There is a point where obesity is absolutely unhealthy. I'm just saying ripped isn't the basis of healthy. So, you know, that's not, stop asking men to send you shirtless photos and stop posting them. They don't look healthy. You think they look healthy. They don't. They look wrong. Amalgamation of deficiency. Yeah, it's hard to pinpoint, though, what it is. It's almost just like you're just like, oh, that. He's emaciated. Yeah. Yeah, look at Jimmy James. You know, go follow Jimmy James, and when he does a guitar stream, you know, like his arm, it's not ripped like striations, but it's like an arm. You're like, that would be a good arm to have. But you look at Nathan's arm and you're like, that's not a good arm to have. Just because you can see the striations in the muscle, that's not ripped. That's not it. They so mad. They get real mad. I mean, he messaged me. He insulted me like 10 times in place of an argument. And I was just like smiling. It's like, dumbass, retard. Like, I was like, I'm just asking you basic questions. Jimmy's hook looks, yeah, Jimmy could, Jimmy's arm, it's like, you know, unfortunately he wanted people watching his guitar playing, but I was like, no wonder he buys guitars. He just breaks them. It's like that in Mice of Men, the guy who just like breaks the rabbit. He just doesn't, like, you just break your guitars. It's like, how are you supposed to hold the guitar and not break it with the arm? If I was Jimmy James, I would just move tiny cars. You know, I'd find those little cars. And I'm not talking about my gay Prius that I inherited from my wife so that she can have the SUV I just bought her. I'm talking about really small cars. I know it's illegal, so I don't advocate, but if I had Jimmy James, one of his arms, I don't need both of them. I would just walk around moving those little tiny cars. I just move them a little bit. Like, just enough. It's like a foot off. They're like, I don't remember parking like this. And then I'm just across the street with my one arm going, you're right. You didn't park like that. Megan says, I didn't inherit it. That's true. It's not inherited. Sorry, that's dark. What is it? Adopted? There's an actual word that's precisely appropriate for this context, and I don't know what it is. The Bible specifies clean and unclean animals. What are your thoughts? Yeah, I haven't gone into it. I think I'm disgusted by pig if it's not bacon. You know, pork chop, just that white slab, you know, people dumping soda on it and all the parasites. Not to say that there aren't parasites in other animals that just look better when they're cooked, but pork other than bacon and like crispy pig ears, which I would eat, you know, like slow cooked pork, pulled pork, something specific about like that thick white slab of it though. Like bacon, I love it. But I'm not sure which are the dirty animals. Appropriate word may have been appropriated. That's hilarious. Bible says not to eat hair. Yeah, one time, I mean, I've eaten rabbit like twice, and one of the times I got really sick. Baby back ribs. Yeah, totally. What's up, Denmark Bear? Let's get Jim Bob some truck nuts for his Prius. That would be hilarious. And Jimmy James has been vegan before. I was much weaker and smaller. I mean, let's just face it. It's a luxury. But it's the current meat system is also a luxury. The only the logical end of the luxury argument is to bring it back to, if all of these amenities were absent, if all the modern technology, Amazon drones to your house, deliveries, supermarket right there, if you remove all of that and straight into the woods, you don't get to float, you don't get to spend your time on Instagram shaming meat eaters. You're going to need a hunter. You're going to need that animal fat. Your body, Nathan, is going to eat itself. It just will. Again, if you get 12 vegans, righteous vegans, logically incoherent, righteous vegans, and you put them on the show alone, that show will be renamed Dead the following season. And for the vegan, they should make it so you don't get to escape. You don't get to call the little boat and a helicopter. No. Because of your lack of humility, you have to be on the first TV show where people actually die in a survival scenario. Okay? But in the last week of your starvation, you get your phone back. And you get your Instagram. And you get to take photos. Alone season dead. Oh shit, yeah, that joke doesn't work because the show's not called Alive. I don't know why I thought it was called Alive. Yeah, it might still work with Alone. No rescue for you. Yeah, the boat still is there, though, and they're filming from afar with a little P900. They're like, Nathan, it's a P900. Cool camera, right? He's like, yeah. The berries, there's no fat in my berries. There's no fat in my... I'm trying to get to Eden. Naked and afraid of steak. That's hilarious. Bob, how tall are you? 5'10", and I wouldn't call that tall. How average are you? Average. My P900 has a leather cap lens holder. That's funny. And I don't want to get into numbers. I know if I studied it, I could probably pull some stuff out. But that's not even the point, because everything ends up coming down to an ought claim. That's the reality. Otherwise, it's all arbitrary goals. Vegans need to relax. Yeah, veganism is similar to Satanism. Nathan is unknowingly a Satanist. He worships the creation. That's his God. He worships the material world that he believes he needs to save and match pre-fall existence. No, only the return of God can do that. The restoration, if you're a Christian, you can't just borrow the restoration of the world without the whole entire story. You fucking idiot. Nathan, you retard. I can definitely get accustomed. Fuck. But Satanism and veganism go hand in hand because it's all worldliness. You're trying to base morality in the world, in the outcome. You're trying to base the future of what ought to be in the world. And we all just live. You just reject fundamentally the fallen state. Okay? Or you assume if we're fallen, we could just correct ourselves at will, or with the right system, or with the right arguments. No, that's all Satanism. Veganism goes hand in hand with Satanism for that very reason. It starts from the material assumption The attempt to ground metaphysics, morality in the world, the worship of the world. The world is what we're here for. It's the world we're here for. We're not here for the world. Whatever happened to vegetarians? Yeah, that was the introduction. It's just the same way with all the other identity politics. It starts with one thing, and it's not a slippery slope fallacy. It's just the progression of inversion of truth. And veganism, Satanism, worldliness, utilitarianism all starts from rejecting truth. You're just stopping your logic at a certain point, and you're just assuming, well, no, I got to do what I can in this world. Tikkun olam. Nathan is very Jewish in his theology. And Nathan shall lie down with a lion. You can't worship the world, Nathan. I'm assuming also that Nathan can't tell me what murder is. I bet you also, as another prediction, is that he'll attempt to call killing an animal murder. Okay. And then he won't be able to justify why murder is immoral. Why? Well, murder in the sense of legality is peculiar to humans, as I've talked about in the previous stream. So that's one red flag against that statement. But the argument murder is immoral, he's going to have a tough time if he includes animals in that. Because, well, I won't give that away now. Some of you know. The only logical way to draw out that conclusion does not involve animals. And the hint is God's not a pig. God's not an octopus. God's not a cow. Okay? Veganism takes the worship of the animal, the sacredness of the cow, let's say, in Hinduism, I believe, and just applies it to all animals, but not bugs. I mean, where do you draw the line? He couldn't draw that line. Because there will always be a gray area between what he calls sentient and not. And then he argues sentience. Well, that's going to be a big problem too. Useraldo 199. Have you ever streamed on germ theory science? No. I have all the books on that. I got to be honest, it's really boring. But maybe if I get hooked on a chapter or two, I'll go into it. But I'm not too drawn to material knowledge and that argumentation, because in my experience, it's a just endless ping pong event, because then you could always question. It's just like Ben Shapiroism. It's not metaphysics. It's not philosophy. It's just, these are the facts. If you would like to dispute those facts, please present new facts, and we can go fact to fact, fact on fact, facts on facts, facts on logic facts. And then you're just arguing from who's got better facts and who can adequately argue or undermine the facts, even if they're true. And then it just becomes this bullshit game. We'll take a loan. Some money for your hay so we can feed the vegans. That's hilarious, dude. Thank you. Veganism replacement for religion. Yeah, the worship is the creation. This is very easy to see. Once you understand the distinction between creator creation, you could not only see other theologies that don't work because they don't make the distinction. You see the monistic tendencies of all other worldviews who borrow from these religions, but not fully. The oneness. We're all we're all the same. You can use the creator distinction to look at and listen from that perspective, and you'll be able to see where people conflate the two. And because, and Jay Dyer argues this, is that there's not many worldviews. Because you keep pulling back and you just ask, what's the starting assumption? What's your starting point? And if you don't make the creator-creation distinction, then you become God, the world becomes God, the creation becomes God, and you are ultimately stuck in a utilitarian mindset, because the only way you could argue are these pragmatic goals in the world. And it's bullshit. It's so easy to knock down. It's insane. Which is why I think generally veganism restricts whatever part of the brain that is required to properly use logic. And one guy said, I could do, the same guy who asked me for photos of myself shirtless, he was like, oh, really? So I could do anything, basically any physical task, I could do it superior to you. And I was like, I've built 5 houses in my life from scratch with 2 other dudes. That was my job before I moved to Los Angeles and became a little special boy. Can you build a house? How many houses have you built? None? So, no. Yeah, maybe you could do push-ups because you do more push-ups. But that's irrelevant. That's not an argument why I should eat meat. So I can do push-ups and do ground and pound with your buddies? I don't want to do that. My opinion is it's all spiritually based. If you are suffering, you know what you did. People don't like hearing that, though. Should stop breastfeeding? Yeah. They'd be like, yeah, when is that vegan? When is that anti-vegan? Again, that's another thing. I'm going to have Nathan define what veganism, because there's 2 definitions under the same word, obviously. They're not 2 separate, contradictory definitions. A bunch of emotional gays. They're very emotional. That might play into it. It's almost like they got to justify their lifestyle by making someone the enemy. But, it has to matter to you whether your arguments, from moral arguments, are coherent or not. If they're not, you got to admit it. I don't think he's going to admit it. And then they're like, you're going to eat a dead animal? I'm like, if I have to, I'll eat a live animal. It's not pragmatic. I might get hurt. I'd eat a fish alive, for sure. Just like a salmon, right? Like, imagine me trying, like, on a lone, trying to catch a salmon like a bear does. Like, I'm just sitting in the stream with my jorts, and I'm just like launching my little beard at the fish. But the moment I actually catch one, that's when whoever's, on the other side of the river filming this zooms in, and then I just smile with my salmon. I would definitely eat a live salmon. So that's not a good argument. Or rotting flesh. That's the other thing these homosexuals do. They appeal to emotion, descriptive language to try to gross you out and shock you, which is an attempt to traumatize you. So they're against animal abuse and eating animal, but they're okay with attempting to psychologically traumatize people. You're like, look at this footage of this terrible factory run by Monsanto and Nike. I'm like, oh, that's horrific. I don't get my meat there. Yeah, but that's what you're a part of. No, I'm not. I have nothing to do with that. What? Oh, dead, rotting flesh. I don't eat dead, rotting flesh. You actually, it's well known. Like you have to actually, that's what an expiration date is. So technically it's slowly oxidizing and rotting, but so is your peach. Oh, you would just eat a dead possum on the street? You know, roadkill? No. Would you eat an old avocado you saw on the side of the road? What are you arguing? Nothing. They use rotting as an insult. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't even matter. Even the argument you were eating rotting flesh with which no one does, you still are arguing a moral claim. How about someone just likes rotting flesh? What are you going to say? Well, that's just gross. Okay. No argument. Do your emotions not play a role in your morals? No. No, your emotions are not an accurate, valid test for reality. Your emotions are signals. They either are consistent with what's going on or not. They're temporary. They're mostly after the fact. They can influence your choices. They can influence your behaviors if you let them. But your emotions are a lot of times involuntary. And so because morality has to do with prescribed behavior, how you ought to be, emotions can't tell you the basis of morality. You can get an emotion and get a sense of something's wrong, immoral, but the emotion itself can't be the basis of why it's immoral. It could be the signal, but it can be wrong. Just like empathy. Empathy cannot be the basis of morality. Feeling something, it's often a projection. You can see someone crying and feel something that they're not feeling at all. And they're like, no, I'm happy. I won the lottery. You're like, oh, I thought you were sad. But regardless, even if you were correct about the emotion, it still doesn't give us a basis for what is right and wrong, what we ought to do, ought not to do. It just tells you sometimes your senses can accurately describe and sense what's going on with someone else. It doesn't tell you. So if I was walking down the street and I saw someone being raped in an alley, if empathy was the basis for morality, as long as I felt bad, I would have done my moral duty for the day. Doesn't tell you whether it's, wrong. I've already done my work. Anyway, I gotta go. I gotta go. Well, it'll probably be Tuesday evening or something with, unless he backs out or something. I'll do it. I'll pull Peterson in once in a while. I don't want to overdo it because it'll just get redundant and annoying. So I'm just going to go to it when I feel like it's needed. Otherwise, I have to go.